Hey guys, you're watching Dansky, the place to be to develop your creative skills. In this tutorial, we're going to be designing a mobile app UI, all in Adobe XD, and it's actually part 1 of 2, and in part 2, which is the next tutorial, we're going to animate this in an app called ProtoPie. So it's going to be super cool. Let's jump into it. Rightio, so we're now in XD, and from the welcome screen I've created a new iPhone 6, 7, 8 artboard, and the first thing I'm going to do is double click this and call it home. This is going to be the home screen, and I've got an image here that I'm going to be using as the main image as well. So let's go to File and down to Import. Navigate to the image and we'll import that into XD, and you can see it's incredibly large here. And we can scale this down holding Shift and just position this exactly where we want it to be, and I can adjust that rotation, and you'll see anything outside of the artboard is a little bit faded. So let's just go and adjust this crop, and you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard as well. Something like this. Now when I select this, you can see all of this excess around the edge as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask this within a shape just so we don't see that both in XD and when we come to working in ProtoPie, we don't want to see that either. So let's grab that rectangle tool and again create a rectangle equal to the width and height of the artboard. We'll put this one over here for now. And if we just go to our layers panel, we can click on the artboard and we just have this image. And I'm going to go edit and copy. So I'm just copying this rectangle to the clipboard for now. And we can drag this one onto here. Deselect the border. And then you can give this a fill color if you like. It doesn't really matter though, because we're going to use this as a mask. So if we drag over both the image and the red rectangle that is on top and go to Object, Mask with Shape, you'll see that if we have nothing selected or if we have the image selected, it is cropped to that shape and we can't see any of the excess outside of the artboard. Then we can double click on this group name and call it image. And remember, we copied that rectangle to the clipboard. We can now go edit and paste, and we have another copy pasted there. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a slight color overlay tint to our image. This is the original image here. And we can go and deselect the border and pick a color for the fill. So we could go with something nice and vibrant, like a pinky reddy color. We've got lots of pinks, blues, and even some purples in this image. So if I move this back on top, what we can do is bring the opacity down like this. Now this kind of serves two purposes. One in that it adds a little bit of a stylized effect to the image, but also when we start to add our text and our button here, it actually makes that easier to read. So it's trying to find a balance. I think if we start at 50%, and we can always adjust that. So at the moment, this color overlay is applied to the entire artboard and covers the whole image. If we click on the fill, we can change this from solid color to linear gradient. Now linear gradient runs from one direction to the other, whether it's running from left to right, top to bottom. And we can change that here by moving these around. Now I'm going to select the darker color on the gradient, and again I'm going to pick a nice vibrant color. In fact, I'm going to add this here, so I've got this to reference. And then I'm going to click on the other side of the gradient and just click on that color as well. So this is essentially the same as a solid fill. We've got the same color running into the same color. However, with this top one selected here, that's this one on the left, I can drag the opacity slider all the way down. So you can see at the bottom, we retain a lot of that pinkiness over here, and it graduates through to transparency. And we could go all the way through to completely transparent, or we could leave just about 20%. So this is what it looks like. So it's a bit darker down here, and then it just graduates to being much fainter at the top. Now doing this just means that we don't have a solid color overlay applied to the whole thing. We have it a bit darker down here. This is where a lot of our text is going to be, and then it's just a lot fainter at the top where the subject's face is. So that looks pretty good to me. What I'll do is open up the layers panel and just call this rectangle overlay. And then I can hold shift and select both the overlay and the image, and we'll group those together. And I'm just going to call this background, and then click the padlock here in the layers panel, just so that it's now locked and we can't select it and move it by mistake. So now we're going to start adding some text. Let's grab that type tool and just left click anywhere, and I'm going to type new summer. And we'll pick a color of, let's go for white, and we'll go 30 pixels on the size, make sure it's centrally aligned. And then we want to center this text on the artboard, so we'll just select here, align center horizontally, and you can see it knocks it into the center. And we can pick a font as well. Just for this tutorial, I'm going to be using Avenir. And we've got Avenir book selected, nice and thin. Okay, yeah, we'll go with that. That looks good to me. And just grab that rectangle tool and left click and drag. Now we don't need to have the border selected, and I'm just going to fill this with black for now. Now, of course, this is in front of the text, so we need to go to Object, Arrange, and Send Backwards. And it's definitely worth remembering these shortcuts because they can save you a lot of time if you have to keep going to this menu just to reorganize your text. Okay, so this is cool. I can reposition this black box, make sure the spacing on the left and right and top and bottom edges is all consistent. This is just a little bit lazy, unless it's deliberate. So let's just kind of make sure that spacing is nice and consistent either side. And we could even drop the opacity of this down a little bit. So we'll go for 85%, just so it allows a little bit of the background image to show through. And we don't even have to use black, actually. We could start with our pink color, and then we could go down here. So we could have something like this, kind of like a really dark purple. So you can see the difference between that and black. Just adds a touch of color, and we could go and increase that opacity again. I think I might keep that at 85. And we can double click the text, drag over the word new, and from the color picker, just select that same pink color. And there we go, we've got our first bit of text, and we have a nice box behind it as well, which not only looks really cool, quite stylized, but it actually helps the text really stand out. And then rather than recreate this again, we can duplicate this for our next piece of text. So let's just left click and hold shift on both of these objects and go edit, duplicate, and just hold shift and drag that down. And we can double click on the text and type collection. And of course I would like this to be white. So we're really putting emphasis on the word new, and then we have summer collection all in the same color. And I'm going to scale this up. You can scale it up here, or you can just type in a value and press return here. And we'll make the color light, so it's a little bit thinner. And I just need to select this box now and adjust the size. Now you can drag from the left or right edge to adjust the size or the width. But if you hold down Alt on the keyboard, it will adjust it equally from both sides, so we don't have to go and reposition our text again. And I think I might just extend this out to the left. Again, I'm just watching for those details, that spacing, top and bottom, and left and right. Just zoom in nice and close. And move these up, and I'm going to have a little gap in between both of these as well, just so they're not touching. Okay, let's grab the type tool again. Now instead of left clicking and typing text, which will do this, it will continue typing forever. I want to put this inside a text container. So let's left click and drag, and you can see when I hit the edge of the container, it wraps onto the next line. So let's go and type some text. We'll go with get the hottest look this summer with the latest trends. And this could be some placeholder text or any text you like. Hottest, there we go. And we'll just bring that down. We'll go for something around 20. and maybe change that from light back to book. This text is a lot smaller, so I maybe want that a tiny bit thicker. And we can change the line spacing here, also known as leading. So we could go for 22, maybe 18 on the size. Fantastic. And again, if I hold down Alt and adjust the size of the text container, you can see it wraps respectively. And if it's not in the center for whatever reason, you can align it to the center using the alignment options at the top. So we have our text. And lastly, we're going to add a button or a call to action. So let's just grab the rectangle tool and draw a button. We don't need the border, and I think I'll keep the color of the button white so it really does stand out. And I'm going to select the type tool and just left click, and we'll type sign up. And it remembers that same Avenir font. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller because this is going to be in capitals as well. And I'm going to change the weight to, let's go for heavy. And of course we can't see this on our button, so let's just change that color to our pink that we've saved down here. And if you don't see it for whatever reason, it might just be behind your white box. Go to Object, Arrange, and Bring to Front. And again, we're going to give this text here the same treatment as the above, in that we're going to pay attention to that detail. Make sure the spacing left and right and top and bottom is consistent, so it's not just a bit off center or a bit wonky. And there we go, we can select this, move it up. And we'll just nudge this up using the arrow keys, bring all of this text and the call to action just a little bit tighter together. And just select all of this text here and go Object, Group, and just make sure that's centrally aligned. Yes, it is. Fantastic. And now what we can do is hold Shift and just select absolutely everything and go Object and Group as well. Now let's open our Layers panel and just have a look at this structure here. We can double click on the folder thumbnail. Now it's important that we do kind of organize our layers effectively. It's great because it just makes life easier for you when you're working on a file, but also if someone else picks up your file, it's not going to be a nightmare for them and they can see what you've done and how you've structured it. But also when we come to animate this in ProtoPie, it's going to make it so much easier if we have our layer structure all in order already. So we can see here, you can just double click each of the folder thumbnails and go inside and have a look at what's what. Or we can just click on this top group and go Object, Ungroup, and it ungroups everything. And we can ungroup this one as well. So let's just start again. Now I'm going to group all of these pieces of text together. So I'm just holding Shift and clicking on each of them. And I can go Object, Group, and we'll just call this group, or we'll call it main text. And we can turn this off and on just to make sure I've captured the right objects in that group, not caught anything by mistake. And then just select both elements of our button, holding Shift, and go to Object, Group, and I'll call this button. So you can see it's just made the layers panel so much more organized and easy to understand. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add a few UI elements. So we're going to add a menu icon, a fictional logo, and then a search icon. So let's zoom in at the top here. And I'll grab the type tool, left click, and I'm just going to type boutique. Now this might be your logo that you're copying and pasting from something like Illustrator, or you could just make up any old logo. So I'll just call this boutique. And I think the size and everything's fine. We'll centrally align that. And I'm just going to do something ever so slightly clever with the O's and just move them closer together. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate, hold Shift and use the down arrow key, and then do the same again. And what we're going to do is just left align all of these. And for the top one, just double click to go inside and delete all the text except the B. Next we'll have the O's. And then lastly, on the last one, I'll have the teak. and just double click the two O's, and you can adjust the character spacing here, also referred to often as tracking. And let's just bring that down to something like -200. So these two O's link together, and then I can hold Shift and use up and then nudge that back into position. And I like to nudge these in and out of position using the arrow keys, because now I know that all three pieces of text here are all on the same level horizontally. And we can just select all of these together and go Object Group. And then from the Layers panel, double click this and call this Logo. And then just make sure that this is central on the artboard. You can see it nudged it into position there. And now we're going to create a couple of icons. So we'll just grab the line tool, left click and hold Shift to draw a horizontal line, and make this white. And then just hold Alt and Shift and drag. There we go, we've got a really quick and easy menu icon. So I can Object Group, and from the Layers panel we'll go Menu Icon. And now I'm just going to create a search icon to go on the other side as well. So we don't need a fill, and we'll give that border a white color, and we'll keep all of this at 1 pixel in size as well. And select the line tool, left click and hold Shift. Holding Shift will snap it to either a 90° or a 45° angle. Make this one white, and the way that I like to get this in the right position for the search icon is I select both elements of it and align these centrally to one another, and then select the line in the middle, so essentially the handle of the search icon, and use the arrow keys down and right. So we go down, right, down, right, down, right, down, right, down, right, down, right. And there we go. I know that it's perfectly in line, and I can adjust the size by dragging this corner here, so we can make it shorter or a bit longer. And then simply hold Shift and select both halves and group those together. From the Layers panel, we can then call this search icon. And zoom out, and I can line this up here. Both of these icons, I can line them up with the logo and with each other, and then position these on the respective side. So I'll drag the menu icon to the left, make sure it snaps against that left edge, and then hold Shift and the right arrow key and go 1, 2, 3. So every time I hold Shift and use an arrow key, it moves it 10 pixels in any direction. So holding Shift and pressing the right arrow key 3 times means that I now have a margin here of 30 pixels. And guess what? We can do the same over here as well. So 1, 2, 3. And there we go. We've got our main icons, and I could go back into this group here by double clicking, and I could select the top one and move it up 1 pixel, select the bottom one, move it down 1 pixel, just to give it a bit more space. And I know that it's all still lined up. And in fact, we can select all of these elements by holding Shift. So the menu icon, the logo, the search icon, group these together. And from the Layers panel, I'm going to call this Nav. So that's short for navigation. And there's actually one last thing that we're going to do on this screen, and that's add a little bit of creativity in the middle. So if we grab the rectangle tool, I'm just going to draw a rectangle, something like this. And what I'm going to do is add a linear gradient. And the darker color, that's the gray here, the default gray, I'm going to pick the pink color. Now at the moment the gradient is running from top to bottom. I want it to run left to right. So let's grab these points here, and you can see the gradient adjusts in real time, and it will snap to the edge nicely. So now we've got it running from left to right, and we could flip it round just so it matches what's in the gradient slider. A bit easier to understand then, I think. And I'm going to select the white one here and bring that opacity all the way down on the opacity slider. So essentially we have the pink running to transparency. Now I'm going to go to Edit and Duplicate and drag this up. and then hold shift and rotate from one of the corners 180 degrees, or you can type in 180 here for the rotation. And next, let's just drag over both of these and we'll group these together. And we'll call these gradients. And you can see this group is completely on its own on the pasteboard here because it isn't actually on this artboard yet. And we can just drag this on and you can see it becomes part of this artboard. Now we want this to be behind everything but in front of our background, so we can actually drag this and reorder it in here. There we go. And I can align this centrally on the artboard as well. And actually I'm going to adjust the angle, so let's just rotate that and scale this up a little bit. And then move this down. So our text and our button is central within this stylized angled gradient that we've created. And I can actually select this gradient and adjust the opacity if I want, so I might drop that down to 90%. So there we go, that just creates a little bit of visual interest within our design as well. So what I can do now is select these different elements and the angled gradient behind, and then use either the mouse or the arrow keys to just move this up or down. I don't want to go too high, just so it kind of goes through her face. I don't really want that. So I'm going to move this down, possibly something like this. And then what I might do, you remember we added the linear gradient at the very beginning. I'd like this logo and these icons to be a bit more visible, so we can double click, unlock the background and go inside this and select that overlay. And then I can go back into the gradient, select this bit here, and you can see I can adjust the opacity. So I'm going to bring this up to about 50, just so it's a little bit more visible, a bit stronger. And we can even adjust this as well. So this is where the gradient starts, so I might bring this up a little bit. And then we can come out of the background and lock that again. It's always good to lock those layers that you don't intend to move, just so you don't move them by mistake. And I can select this text here. If you want to jump straight inside of a group and select an object without actually ungrouping the group itself, you can hold down Command or Control and left click it. And I could go in here and I could select some slightly thicker text on this smaller text here. But there we go, we've essentially created our first screen. So now the next screen that we're going to create is actually going to be a sign up screen. So the intention is that the user clicks the sign up button and it loads the screen where they can either go ahead and sign up, or they can cancel the sign up process and return to this screen. So let's go ahead and create a new artboard. We'll just select our existing artboard, grab the artboard tool, and we could drag and draw our own custom artboard, but it's going to be in the same size. So let's just click iPhone 678 and it adds this right next to us. And we can double click on the name and we'll just call this one Sign Up. So what we can do now is, well, we've created lots of text elements here already, so we may as well just reuse those. So remember what we just talked about? Hold Command or Control. You can select an object inside a group. We'll go Edit, Copy, and then select the new artboard, go Edit and Paste. And it will paste it in there. And we can just give this a grey colour for now, just while we lay this up. So we'll type name, and I can bring this down. In fact, I can actually change this from an area or container piece of text to just point text over here. So you can just toggle between the two. We're not going to need this text here to wrap on multiple lines, so it's just so much easier. I don't know why I did that then. So let's just grab the line tool and left click and hold shift to draw a perfectly horizontal line. And we'll move this up, and if it is off center, you can just align it with this option here. Now this is all great at the moment, but don't worry, we're going to change that in a moment. So we can just select both of these objects and go edit, duplicate, and drag down. Same again, edit, duplicate, drag down. And you can see XD helps us get that spacing nice and consistent. Now normally I would use the repeat grid option and just repeat this top one, but I'm going to be changing the color in a moment, so I didn't want to do that in this tutorial. And we'll just type here email and a password as well. Now we also need some text here, just reinforcing to the user that they are on a sign up screen. So we'll hold Command or Control and click on our new summer text. Go edit, copy, switch over to our new artboard, edit, paste, and there we go. And we can double click on this text and we'll type sign up. And if it's not already, just give it that same paint color. And our button as well, we need a button, and we've created one already. So we can hold Command or Control, select the sign up text, hold Shift, whilst keeping Command or Control held, left click on the button as well, and go edit, copy, switch over to the next artboard, edit and paste. And this is a white background, so we're actually going to swap those colors around. So the box becomes pink and the text becomes white. And we can go and group those together, and from the layers panel, just type button. And you can see as we switch between the artboards, the layers change as well. So it always shows you the active artboard in the layers panel. And for the name, we'll type Jane Smith, and we'll give this a color. So we're going to simulate that the user, who is Jane Smith, has actually typed her name. So she's started this sign up process. And we can select email and password, and we'll make these a light gray color. And just make a note of this 6-digit value here. This is a reference to this specific color. And I'm going to then select all 3 of the lines and change the border color to that same color and press return. In fact, I can even click the plus icon and I can save that color there. If you want to get rid of any of these colors, just left click and drag them off and they will disappear. Okay, so the user has completed their name and they just have to fill out their email and their password. So we'll leave it like this. And then let's maybe go and adjust some of this positioning. Make sure we've got a nice bit of consistent spacing here and here. And it doesn't all look central to me. So let's click that button and there we go. That's a bit better. So I like to just click lots of different elements in XD. Just make sure that they are all central. You can see it's just nudging them into position there. So we have the sign up screen. Now the last thing that I'm actually going to add is a cross or a close button at the bottom. So if the user clicks the sign up button, they enter this screen and they decide they want to go back and discontinue the sign up, they can exit that process. Now I'm actually going to go over here. I've already got a couple of UI elements, these 2 icons, and I want to create another one. But what happens sometimes if you create them all separately is they can look very different stylistically, but also in terms of size. So I'm going to create this one, which is going to be a cross. So we've got a line there, diagonal line, edit, duplicate, and I can change the rotation here to 90 and press return. And what can happen when you create icons in lots of different places separately, they can be completely different sizes. So when I create all my icons together, I can look at them and go, okay, this cross is a bit small, I want it to be a bit larger, and all of your icons have a bit more consistency to them in both style and size. So this one looks good to me. We'll group that together, and from the layers panel, change this to cross icon. And I can of course drag this over here. And then it moves onto our sign up artboard. And of course it's white on white, so we can't see anything. But I can just hold Command or Control and change this to the gray color. And then of course select it, just make sure it's central on that artboard. And then just drag over everything and just adjust some of this positioning, maybe move this cross down to the bottom, hold shift and use the up arrow key 1, 2, 3 times. So we had that 30 pixel margin for these icons, and we have that for here as well. And then I can just adjust these other elements. So you can see here we have consistent spacing, and top and bottom we have pretty consistent spacing as well. So there we go. We started with the image, we added an overlay, we then added some text and a button or call to action. We then added a fictional logo, some UI elements such as a few icons, a bit of stylistic angular gradient design, and then we also created a sign up screen with a sign up button and a means of closing that sign up screen. And there we go, we've designed both of these screens, and in the next tutorial we're going to take both of these into ProtoPie and start animating them. And there we go, that's the end of part 1. We've created the mobile app UI all in XD, and in part 2 we're going to jump into ProtoPie and start animating everything with some really cool transitions and movement. It's going to look awesome. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below. A huge thank you to the people who support me on Patreon. Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more or become a patron, there is a link in the description. But as always, like this video if you enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll see you next time.